All right. Good Sunday morning and afternoon to wherever you tune into this. Real excited to have my next guest on. I've been listening since maybe a few years back, but I will disclaimer that and say that I'm fairly certain back around 2017 or so, I do recall listening to or purchasing the EP that came out 2016, if I'm not correct, or if I'm correct. Um, and I don't know what happened between that time and then I like to say rediscovering your band a little bit. I think last year or the year before again, and saying, "Oh, that's familiar." The voice is familiar too. Kind of one of those things where I consume so much music where it just probably got lost in the shuffle of me going through things and listening.
Mhm.
But I'm excited to have you on to talk about See This Through and the journey that the band has had since its inception, and talking about the in betweens and then where things are going. But Nick Blohm, I'm joined by frontman and guitarist for See This Through. Thanks for coming on. How are we doing?
You're doing great, Will. Thank you for having me on.
Not a problem. I'm excited to have you on and pick your brain about your music. Big fan. That's probably obvious. And so I kind of know a bit of the backstory for the band. I've read the website, the bio that's up there, and done a little bit of looking myself. But for the people that don't know, See This Through, that watch this and they want to know more about you, what could you say about kind of the beginnings for See This Through, kind of where the catalyst for the band began? What set you on course to where we are now?
So for many years, I was a solo acoustic artist. I
Okay.
was by myself, and some time had gone by. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do it. I'd never really been in a band outside of. I had one prior to this for a minute, and then I was in another one as a guitarist, but they were both pretty short lived. Um, and it was Chad, our lead guitarist, who I'd worked with in a previous band. He was the lead vocalist in that band. Reached out and said, "Hey, man, when you dropping an album?" I'm like, "Well, it's funny you should ask." So we reconnected. We started jamming, and it was just the two of us for a good summer. And then we put our feelers out, and we got Steve on drums, and we have Tyler on bass. Tyler's actually I'm related to Tyler.
Okay. Yeah.
So he's a cousin. So that's kind of funny how that works out. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where it started. These guys, Chad, Steve, Tyler, um, they took a chance on me, I guess, and we've built something really cool over the years, and we're still taking swings at it, and somehow we've been fortunate enough to reach people like you,
Yeah.
and which is crazy to think. We're just living normal lives like everyone else. We're just putting in the extra hours and the long nights and trying to make something of it, like a lot of people are. But we've
Mhm.
we've been fortunate. So that's kind of that's the broad overview of where it all kind of started.
Well, it sounds like a very pleasant beginning, just kind of, you have your cousin in the band and then, your guitarist and, it just seems like a band of brothers, in my opinion, just the chemistry that you seem to have on stage. I've seen little clips, I've looked at some photos and stuff through the years, and, it seems like a really good, environment or atmosphere with See This Through. Um, when I went back and re-listened to the EP that came out, 2016, I've been listening to it a lot over the last week or so, just to get refamiliarize myself with it and relive some other moments I might have had the first time I heard it. And even back then, I feel like the music, it showed the kind of bond in the band and just the whether the vision for the band kind of varied a little bit from each member or whether it's pretty on course with one another. The way the music sounds when you're listening, it just really sounds real fleshed out, I guess, and it's very put together, and it's not, all over the place like some can be, especially for a band. Some bands when they're starting out, things can kind of sound scattered because you're figuring things out and everything, and but that EP is just it's an impressive EP, and I took away a lot from it. There's a lot of feeling in there. There's a lot of subjects that get touched on with that. When I first heard On My Own, man, that was one that very nearly made me bawl my eyes out. I'm like, man, I feel that, sounded very personal. And that's an aspect of the music that I connect with very strongly, just how personal it sounds, but also how honest it sounds. So yeah, I think the four of you just have something real special is what I'm getting at. And you may not be up on, in front of 50,000 people, but that doesn't matter. The music speaks for itself, in my opinion. And you guys really have something going for you, if I could say that. And I'm excited for, the future as much as I am the present. So for that EP though, and this kind of, I don't know why I put it towards the back of my questions talking about that first EP, but what could you tell me about when you set out to write that, you four, and kind of what the experience was like?
So the first EP was, for us, it was, well, all the writing experiences are unique because you come across firsts,
Right.
even when you don't expect to. The first EP was comprised, I think Tripping was the one song that carried over from my solo days, and we brought it in. But Not the Same was something that we were just starting a rehearsal one day, and we were kind of waiting for everyone to hook up, and Chad played the opening 2-3 notes that are actually in the song now. He was just futzing around on guitar, and then Steve threw in the drum beat. They're just screwing around. Next thing you know, we're just riffing. And by the end of that practice, we had our phones recording. At the time, we had a PA. It was just a really loud room. I don't know how we can still hear, quite frankly, because for years we practiced in a very loud room. But our phones recorded it enough so we could kind of remember it, so we wouldn't forget. And I'd say within a week or two, we had a song that we just were pretty good with. And the other songs kind of came out of that too. Pointless Pursuit was one that me and Chad were working on before we had a full band lineup. And shortly after we started working on that, then we had our full band lineup. So we kind of all got our first writing session kind of with that one, because the ball was already rolling.
Got it.
But On My Own, that song's kind of our mission statement as a band. And it's a song that I have to remind myself where I was when I wrote it, because there was a time when I was a solo artist. I got involved with some individuals on a business side, and they held me to a contract for a couple of years, and it prevented me from performing. Shows were taken away that we had scheduled, and it was a time where it should have been a springboard, but it ultimately just killed progress for a couple of years. So sitting around and not able to perform for people, not able to get out into the public space, that killed me. And On My Own was kind of a reflection of that whole thing. And it's a reminder of, and every time we get up on stage and we have the privilege to play on a stage, because that's, for me, it is a privilege to do it. But every time we have a show, I'm extremely grateful for that show, because there was almost a time in my life where, and it was the reality there for a little while, I couldn't do anything. And having that taken from me was like having my voice taken away. And so now when we get to play that live, it's special. It's always special for me, because I got through that. I got through all that nonsense, and we're still doing this. So it's it's just ultimately, and I know this wasn't necessarily your question, but
No worries.
dovetailing what you were talking about with On My Own. On My Own is just a nice reminder to never give up, and don't listen to people that tell you you can't, even if that person saying it is yourself. You know, so that's yeah. So the writing process for On My Own, kind of coming back to that. Yeah, that was interesting because it was just us getting together, practicing a couple days a week, and things would come out of that. Or sometimes I'd go home, and in the case of On My Own, I had my acoustic out and I was just strumming along, and I just had an idea for some lyrics and I jotted them down real quick, and the song just came to life. And that's usually not the case. It's usually more
Mhm.
laborious, but that one just kind of came together. And it really just comes down to someone has an idea, we start jamming it. How's that, how does the riff feel, where's it going, are we vibing with it? And if it is, we just roll with it and we see where it takes us. And that's kind of what On My Own, that whole EP, not just the song but the whole EP was that, um which is a bit different than how we did things for our more recent songs and the ones that
Right.
are still yet to come, which is a completely different process. But we can get into
Yeah.
that another time.
Oh, I plan on it.
I
I
I, I
plan
don't
on it.
I don't want to get too far ahead of you, so I guess I'll just.
Man, that would be a problem even if you did, because while I have I call it a cheat sheet, it doesn't have to be set with each point being what's moved on to next. So if we bounce around, we bounce around. We can be fast and loose or whatever. It's uh, I like to describe this podcast of not being as typical as others, because I don't really put any pressure on the dialogue and having to stick with one set thing, because I feel like that can make it sound like less organic of a conversation. And
Mhm.
so we'll just see where it goes. And if it goes off into another kind of topic, then we'll just let it.
Sounds good to me. There's plenty of topics we could veer into.
Yeah. And I hope that's what happens, because I love talking. And
But yeah, man. And I reflect a little bit. It's funny because when we did the EP for On My Own, we wrote and did all the pre-production before going into the studio, and we connected with producer Josh Schroeder, who is awesome. I mean, and he took a chance on us. And when we worked with him, he brought the songs up to another level too. But the thing is, with that was a rapid session. We spent 1 week in the studio,
wow.
and that was it. On My Own, the whole thing was recorded, it was cut together, it was mastered, it was we were in the studio for like 5 days, maybe six. And then the next week or two after that, we had the finals, we had the masters.
Wow, man.
um Compare that to our last venture. Like I said, it was very different, and COVID had a big part to play in that.
Yep.
But we wrote everything in the studio for the newer songs, and we were traveling a lot to be at the studio. And um, it's just funny how things can change and processes change over time. So there's a big difference between how we did On My Own and how we're doing these next batch of songs, which, yeah, it's a bit
Well,
different.
dude, with having a week to put that EP together, and I know you're fleshing out the songs before you went to the studio too, but a week of actually getting in, tracking, doing everything that a band does with its producer and mixer and all that, and the mastering within that week, and then the week or two after that of finalizing everything and making it to where it can be out for distribution. It is such a great sounding EP. It's got some amazing depth with its sound. It's loud too. I could have my car maybe around half volume and it's rattling, and it's not sounding distorted or washed out. It's just really strong, really well put together, well produced, mixed, mastered work, man. It's a great EP. So that is impressive, having a week to do it in a studio.
It's kind of crazy when I think back on it. We were very we knew before we got into the studio, we kind of worked out, all right, on Saturday we're going to do this. Sunday is going to be an off day. Like we did drums first. And then
Hmm.
Josh had a day to work on the drums, make sure that everything was preliminarily mixed so that we'd have something to write to record too, so that we could really just feel it. And it was, yeah, so we knew one day it was going to be drums, one day it was going to be guitars, one day it was going to be bass, and one day was all vocals. And it kept us on track, it kept us efficient, but it also helped that we had the songs 95% fleshed out. But Josh also
Hmm.
brought a lot to the table from the production side and adding
Hey,
creative elements.
amazing job he did. Yeah.
Yeah, he did great stuff. Super nice guy. And then you fast forward, we got in contact with Shane Grush at Grush Audio, and this was a completely new experience for us. Josh worked with us, collaborated with us, but with Shane, we wrote the songs in the studio, so it was a co-write. Undertow was the one song that we brought with us, and we had a short list of songs that we were ready to take into the studio and do, but we put them on the back burner because we're like, you know what? Let's take advantage of this opportunity to do a whole new process and see what happens.
Right.
So we brought Undertow. It's largely, for the most part, it's not a whole lot different than what we had done pre-production with. The guitar solo's new. The bridge is what really changed up a lot for that. But Shane pushed us because we had those weekends sitting in the studio constantly talking about where we wanted to go, where we didn't want to go, what we liked, what we didn't like. And then we'd spend 8 to 10 hours in the room just jamming. And some days were
Mm.
rough because at some point, it doesn't matter how much you try to write something new, you keep writing the same progression. And it's like, all right, we got to break for a while.
Yeah.
We got to go get lunch, or, walk across the street and buy an energy drink. Something's got to. But it was an awesome process. And like I said, Shane really pushed us. And I think he brought out a lot of really great things, and he taught us a lot while we were there. I mean, I would recommend anyone work with him. Same with Josh. I mean, we've been really blessed and fortunate to have worked with really awesome people, but Shane has definitely put in a lot of time with us, and we've really leveled up our performance. And
I would
and it
say
taught
so.
us and it taught us new ways to write too. Like when you start hitting that wall, all right, try this. And because I'm a perfectionist, so I have a habit of, if I can't get it 100% right away, it just starts to gnaw at me. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to be 100%. It can be a really crap idea 95%, but there might be that 5% of, there's something cool there. Let's work on that. And it's okay. You're
Yeah.
just, working through it. And uh, so, yeah, we learned a ton in the last writing process. It was a much longer process because we started working up at Grush Audio, which is up in like Auburn Hills, Michigan area near Detroit. And it was driving out there every weekend. For me, that's 700 miles round trip every weekend.
Damn.
And there's probably around 28, 29 trips overall throughout the whole process.
So that's around what, 6,000 miles or so, maybe more.
It's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
It's a lot of miles. Over 12,000 miles, I think, with my mental math. I don't quote me on that. I'm not a math major.
I am not
Uh,
either.
and then, to make it more interesting, when we tracked the drums, we opted to go down to Nashville to track all of our drums. And so we went down to Blackbird Studios and got Studio A for a day and tracked all of Steve's drums. We went to do some vocal tracking in there, and we got started, but ultimately we just ran out of time. And that was a target of opportunity. That wasn't the main reason we went.
Right.
But yeah, outside of drums, everything was tracked at Grush Audio, which is it's a cool little studio, and it's you know, like I said, Shane's built something really cool there over the years, and yeah, it's just been a great experience, and we learned a lot from it, and we're excited about the things we haven't yet released.
As am I. I want to touch on Undertow a little bit more because I feel like I made it pretty clear that that's my baby from your band. That so I'm a really big fan of that song that has that build up, right?
Yeah.
And just those ebbs and flows each time that arc comes, it's even stronger. It hits even harder. It just the way you guys put that song together and just what you sang. Bleh, tongue ain't working. Just
Happens.
I feel like is what it was written about. You know, the meaning behind the song. Man, it just packs a punch, and it's. I showed that to a friend of mine. He's I've been friends with this guy for probably 20 plus years, and we're a lot alike as far as like liking songs that have those builds like that. And the reason why is I feel like it kind of takes a certain kind of mind and a certain kind of musician to write a song that way. And I feel like songs like that maybe I'm wrong, but take a lot of work to flesh out. Because you have those songs that are just it starts and you can see where it's going. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it starts and you know where it's going to go. You know, okay, it's going to follow this kind of progression. Cool. But Undertow, man, that I don't feel like that song really sticks to a certain thing, but what it does stick to, you guys just pulled it off so well. And I really want to pick into your mind more behind that song, and you just went into it a lot. But how did you pull that off? Like honestly, because I'm just so impressed by it. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, it's a really cool song, but man, you're making it sound like it's a Grammy winning song. Well, in my mind, it could be. You know, it's really
Oh,
strong songwriting.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, that was a song that when we first started writing it, we kind of fell in love with that one. I'm like, this feels like it felt like at the time, and I still feel this way. I feel like the lyrics told the story better than um a lot of previous attempts.
Mhm.
And we had a pretty solid foundation going into the studio, but a lot of that buildup, which is something we wanted to do, but that buildup intensified throughout the song with Shane. You know,
Mhm.
Shane took it and said, "Hey, you know what? Let's pull it back a little bit right here," and it it helps to have that third party perspective to look at it objectively because the original version that we had written, it also had a buildup throughout the whole song, but having that third party perspective said, "Hey, let's let's taper that back just a little bit more." Like for instance, the original chorus, first chorus, it was clean. It wasn't there wasn't any distortion. It was still scaled back, but I was picking the strings
Okay.
quite a bit. You know that it never really stopped. Well, now you pair that back with all right, it's going to be a clean tone, with a little bit of a delay, and you're just going to hit an open chord and just let it ring out, and then let the vocals try to carry it. And you know, we wanted to give it that feeling like you're kind of singing into a dark void a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit. And so I don't know. We knew what we wanted to do. It's just at the time we couldn't articulate it as well as we'd liked. Um, but having a good producer can help you crack through that because
Oh yeah.
they're kind of like a therapist, especially when they have to
For
deal with all the
song.
conversations, you know,
Yeah.
conversations that have nothing to do with music, and and also the ones that do have to do with music. It's funny, but yeah, it helps when everyone in the room is on the same page. And I feel like that's always been the case, especially with Undertow. That one was pretty clear cut where we wanted to go with it. So that build that you refer to really came to life in the studio when we were able to take it section by section, piece it out, and you know pull back and look at the whole arrangement and go, okay, what are we liking? What are we not liking? And just taking that time to slow down and, you know, surgically go in and mess with the song, which we hadn't done that up to that point.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And I think that's how we ultimately got to where we got to, was pausing and slowing down, actually.
Yeah, well, I think that's crucial to do sometimes, you know, because you don't want to make things get to the point of feeling forced out of you, you know, and trying to force an idea to work. So just know I'm always impressed by that song whenever I push play on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you know I don't have the best set of ears for picking up on things in a song, but the final time that chorus comes in, am I correct when I say that I feel like the tempo changes a little bit again, where it's just a little bit faster that final time it comes in? Because to my ear, I feel like it is just slightly.
Nope, the whole song is
Oh,
110 beats per minute.
okay.
But I think that, yeah, I don't know, but I know that the tempo doesn't change. I'm just trying to think of why it might feel like it does. But
I
I imagine that might have something to do with dynamics, where it
yeah.
gives you the impression that something's changed, but nothing has. So that's cool. That's interesting, and no one's ever said that. So that's interesting feedback.
Yeah, it's only a positive thing. It sounds good. If I'm imagining it going on in the last time the chorus comes on, that's cool. But I feel like that's what I'm hearing. So, you know,
For sure.
yeah. But no, before I move on for Undertow, just again, uh, you may disagree, but I feel like that's right now, anyways, because we haven't heard the songs that are being worked on. But right now, for me, that's your best song. Like that is just the baby for me, and I just can't say enough good things about it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I won't speak on behalf of the guys, but I know for me personally, it's hard to say. You know, I lose objectivity on what I
Okay.
think is the best song. So I'm like, I don't even try to name what I think is the best song. I just know we just try to give it our all with all the songs, and you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think, because I'm not the one potentially showing up to our shows to support them,
I
or to,
mean,
you know, I could talk to myself on a webcam, but it's way more interesting if you say, hey man, come on my podcast, we'd love to have you.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. I mean, no, I hear you.
it, it was one of my favorite songs to write. I will say that, because it wasn't about me necessarily. It was one of the first songs I wrote that paralleled stuff that was going on in my life, but I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking
Mhm.
about others and trying to write a song about what others were going through, but trying to relate to it. So that was, which was new for me, because pretty much up to that point, every song was about me, because, you know, it's
I mean,
natural. It's what I'm experiencing.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
I think a lot of songwriters write about things going on in their lives first before maybe observations. So, but shifting gears and trying to write about something that isn't about you, I could understand that that could be challenging too. Doing that, you know, especially if you're used to writing about your experiences, and then having to switch your mind off as far as that goes, and kind of step back and look at something and maybe write it from what that person was experiencing, or like you saw a news headline and so you're like, oh, I'm going to write about that and how it's affecting people, or or something like that. And then of the 4 songs that you guys have released recently enough, you had 3 in 2023, had 1 in 2024, which is Disarm the Pain, which
mhm.
that's another one that I go back to again and again, because addiction is a bitch, if I could say. I've seen it in my family. I've experienced it in some ways for myself, but we've touched on Undertow pretty heavily. For the other three songs, though, what can you tell me about the ways that they came together and how the reception has been from the fans with them?
So yeah, well, I guess I'll start with the order in which they were released because that will help me. So after Undertow was
Yeah.
All or Nothing, and All or Nothing, well, All or Nothing, What You've Become, and Disarm the Pain. Those were all created in studio, and All or Nothing was really interesting because that was probably the hardest song to write of all of them, and it was because when
Wow.
we were just writing the music. I wish I could play for you all the other versions of that song because we had some cool guitar riffs, we had some cool arrangements, but the one thing that didn't change was that opening guitar riff. I guess two things that didn't change were the opening guitar riff
Okay.
and the progressions of the chorus. Those are the two things that remain constant. What was up in the air, it was the verse because you had this you had this chorus that felt like it's longing for something or it wants to like the emotion behind it is sad and longing, and then we had this really
Mhm.
cool verse riff and drum beat, and it just felt really in your face. And while technically they worked sonically with one another, it just I couldn't write to it. When it came time to actually write a story, write lyrics, I'm like it feels like I'm going down one path and then the topic has to
Okay.
change. So, spending a couple weeks because I would travel on the weekends, go to the studio, and then drive 5-6 hours back home, and then spend the week working during the day, and then at night trying to write and just listening to these loops over and over again, trying to come up with something. And I finally just said, "To hell with it! I'm going to rewrite it because even if it's just an exercise of futility, just something to break out of that rut." So came up with just a different chord progression, and I'm like, I think I'm digging this. And right away, I had lyrics come to
Mhm.
mind, and I had melodies, and I'm like, wait a minute, weeks of trying to crack this code, and all it took was for me to change the verse structure, and all of a sudden, stuff started to roll. And I did a quick recording at home. I sent it to the guys internally, and we're like, that's definitely departure. Let's see. And we went into the studio that next week. We played it, and we were getting ready to go to lunch. And before we left, we're like, all right, what do we want to work on when we get back? All right, well, let's work on song 8 because that's what it was called at the time, was song 8. And like, well, we've been struggling with this one, but here's something I came up with. It's a departure, but let's listen to it. And I'm sitting there, I'm nervous as hell because I'm like, if people don't like this, I don't know where to take it at this point. Like I was at the point of I have nothing left to put into this. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh God. Just so nervous while everyone's listening to it. And they got done listening to it. Shane hit spacebar to stop playing. He goes, that's what we're doing when we get back. That's awesome. Let's go get food. I'm like, oh, thank God.
You've
I
broken through.
and and you know that song wasn't really about me either. That song was more about all of us.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right, there's something I want to say, but I don't want to be preachy about it. But maybe we should all kind of look around the room and instead of letting people divide us, maybe we should take a moment and be like, hey, we're in this together. We don't have to agree on everything, but before it's too late, maybe we should realize that we have something in common, anything in common. And that's the very watered down meaning of All or Nothing. What You Become was actually, that one changed quite a bit too. But we started that in early 2019. We actually, before we signed anything and decided to go full tilt and full production with Shane, we figured we'd have a weekend where we'd go out and do a songwriting session for a day just to see how we vibed and everything. And What You Become
Uh-huh.
started that day. So before we went to the studio that day, we had we had a rough song structure in place with lyrics. And so we came back and we completely changed that one up quite a bit too. But yeah, that started long before we actually started on the song officially in the studio. We had a songwriting session, and that was pretty fun how that came together. That song is just pure anger.
It's a great track,
Very,
you know.
it's very vindictive, and it's fine because I can be that way, and I've accepted that. So, and who
Yeah, I
can't?
mean,
Quite frankly, we're all human. Someone pisses us off enough or
yeah.
does you wrong, you're like, yeah, yeah. I hope you answer for that down the road. So, um, and disarm the pain, and like you said, that one's all about addiction, and
Mhm.
um, I've watched, like, similar to you, I've watched family members go through it. I've watched friends go through it, and I wanted to write it from the perspective of someone who's not experiencing the addiction, but someone who's watching
Right.
someone go through it. And then we kind of went tongue in cheek with that for the music video, and went full grindhouse on that and did kind of a horror movie sort of aesthetic where, hey, I don't want to offend anybody by saying it the wrong way, but the whole idea was, as someone who's watched loved ones go through addiction, there's so much hope and disappointment all tied up together, because in all likelihood, if you're watching someone go through it, you're going to watch them fail over and over again. And yeah, you could get help, you could do better things, and maybe you're fine for a while, and sometimes they never relapse, but more often than not, I think it's over
They
80% of the
do.
time they do. And it's hard because then you want to be there to help them back up, because it's tough. And I'm glad I haven't gone through any of that myself, so I try to say, look, they're experiencing something you've never dealt with. Try to be there for them, but you also don't want to be taken advantage of, because depending
Yeah.
on what they're addicted to, they can you can be treated poorly because they're not in their right
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, and
And
drag down
so,
with them.
yeah, and you don't want to become a martyr, and
Yeah.
it's easy to become one, and you don't even know it. So with the music video, we're like, all right, let's explore this theme a little bit more. So you have someone who's tied up. They're the person with the addiction, and everyone else around them is fed up. And now they get to exact pain on them for a change. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's obviously we don't want to do that to anyone.
No.
But it with a horror movie aesthetic and like a 70s grindhouse feel, it's an exploitation thing. We can have some fun with it. And I love those types of movies. So I was stoked when Terrifier came onto the scene.
Oh man, my wife loves those movies.
Oh, and then Terrifier 2. I
Yeah.
remember I got to go see that in theaters, and it was towards the end of its theatrical run, and I think it was me and maybe one or two other people in the theater, and I'm like, this is incredible. And then
Yeah.
when Terrifier 3 came out, man, that place was a madhouse. It was just
Yeah.
packed. And I could just sense, I'm like, so it's not just me. I'm not sensing the cultural shift here. There are plenty of people that are just as disgusting as I
Yeah.
am for liking this stuff. It's so much fun. So, we kind of leaned into that heavily with Disarm the Pain because I was anticipating Terrifier 3. And I'm like, man, just it's like a love letter to that whole format and genre. So taking a serious topic, trying to have some fun with it from a creative standpoint while still respecting anybody who's going through it directly or with someone, because it sucks, man. It really sucks.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have to try to have fun, I guess, and talk about hard subjects in a way that comedians do it.
Yeah.
That's
All
what
the
comedy
time.
is. We're gonna
Yeah.
address taboo things, but we're gonna make you laugh. Well, we weren't really trying to make anyone laugh, but
Yeah.
uh, more like
Yeah.
ridiculous laugh.
Well, all things considered, though, I think you guys got the point across. nailed the message with Disarm the Pain pretty effectively, because I think the aesthetic of the music video, what you were going for, still really works well with the subject itself. And just I've been in that seat where, I've sat someone down and I've explained to them, look, I know that you're going through something hard. I'm just going to acknowledge that right out the gate. I'm not going to say that what you're going through isn't hard and that you don't have your own reasons, right? But taking a step back and maybe looking at how it's affecting the people around you that are wanting to help you, not make you do things, but kind of guide you, and how it's affecting them going, because in a sense, vicariously, we're going through it with you by doing this. So you nailed that in the video 100%. And I haven't really seen a lot of what fans have said in the comments, because honestly, I don't look at comments a lot or all the time when I go and watch things. So what that brings me to is just for those 4 songs, like which ones have been getting the most love from the fans? Like I'm sure that all of them are getting love, but what's been the baby for the fans out of the 4 so far?
That's a really good question. And it's hard to gauge because it depends who I talk to. I will say that from a number standpoint, the song that got the most traction was What You Become. Of all of the videos that we released, that one was kind of taking off. Like for us, getting over 1,000 hits on something in a day is really good, at our level as we're trying to build. And that one was getting between 1,200 and 2,000 plays per day. And that was on YouTube, and our subscriber number on YouTube grew, because that's where it seems like a lot of people find us, oddly enough, is on YouTube. The unfortunate reality of What You Become is that it released the week before Thanksgiving.
Oh.
So all the momentum that we had just nosedived, because then it's Thanksgiving. People are with their family, which is where they should be. We're just writing songs. That's not as important as your family time. But it was a bummer a little bit. But it was awesome because that said, okay, we're doing something right here, because you just don't know. Plenty of bands, I'm sure, that they went into the studio, they came out, they said, this is going to be the single. And then the label or management or someone says, nope, it's going to be this one. And they throw that one out the door. Or the one that they thought was going to hit is the one that, it does all right, but this other one hit and they never saw it coming. You don't know what's going to happen until it's out there. But from a numbers standpoint, What You Become seemed to hit more people. But it seems like Undertow is the one that has resonated, especially with the fans that we had already going into things. And Undertow was kind of it was sort of bridging the gap from where we were to where we're going, because at its core, it's a pretty straightforward rock song.
It is.
There's not a whole bunch of programming going on in it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's nice to strip things down from time to time and just, guitars, drums, vocals, and just see where you can take it. The songs that came after Undertow, they have more of that modern sheen to it. And that's been a lot of fun too, because now we can introduce things that we couldn't do before. Maybe melodies that we just couldn't incorporate because we're not playing the right instrument with the right timbre, So, but yeah, Undertow seems like it bridges that gap between On My Own EP and where we're at and where we're going now. So yeah, I think Undertow has had the best response from people as far as people reaching out to us directly. But we've actually gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people. And, I take positive feedback. It means a lot, because people take a moment out of their day just to say, hey, I like this. And it's not a small thing, especially because there's so many people who are so quick to jump on and just, and just throw you under the bus for good reasons or for no good reason. It doesn't, So yeah, I look at our comments and I check comment sections because it's good to know what the feedback is, but you're always kind of bracing because
Yeah,
not
you never
everything's for
know.
everyone. It's not for everybody. And sometimes the people it's not for, they like to seek it out just to let you know how much it's not for them. And
Yeah, I mean, you know, so if I was to bring up any band that I might have thought of, upon first hearing See This Through, and it's probably going to be no surprise to you, I would think of someone like Stained or Seether or Breaking Benjamin, or, bands like that. But it wouldn't be so much because you guys sound like those bands, it could be the timbre of your voice, because sometimes I listen to you sing, I'm like, they should cover Seether, or they should cover Stain, because I think just the strengths of See This Through, you guys would nail those songs with your own spin on it, because listening to See This Through, the songs sound like they do really well on radio, but I feel like I'd be correct in saying that the goal of the songs, though, for you guys isn't because you're trying to strike any kind of big thing, right? You're making music that you want to hear, and songs that you love first and foremost. But anybody that listens to, Stained or Breaking Benjamin or Seether wouldn't be surprised to like what they're hearing, because it could fit in those veins.
So those bands are huge influences.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Another band that's a huge influence is Cold.
Oh, I'm seeing them next month, by the way.
Where are you seeing them?
Portland, Oregon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they're a super nice group of people. Like you won't find nicer people. And Scooter has been someone I've looked up to for a long, long time. And it's funny because things work out and now we're friends. So it's funny how things work out. But Cold, Stained, Seether, Breaking Benjamin, you could extend to 3 Days Grace.
Yeah.
Deftones.
But
especially with bands like Stained, Seether, and Cold, those are like my trifecta, because the lyrics from those bands have always been so honest at the end of the day, and sometimes they're hard to listen to. But it's easy to forget sometimes that there are people behind those songs. And record deals or the business side of it, while however you want to go about it, whether you're someone seeking a record deal or you're just trying to make it a business, we do want to make money doing this. I'm not going to lie and say we don't want that. We'd love to be able to do this for a living, and we're working towards it. But what's first and foremost is that, do we have a connection with the people that would want to listen to our music? I mean, fans, which are ultimately, if you want to make it a business, they're your customers. You got to take care of them, but you don't want to lie to them. And I don't expect people to like every song that we put out. If you take one person that loves our stuff, we're going to put out a song eventually. If they're like, yeah, it's not my favorite song. Or maybe I don't like that song at all and I skip that one. But as long as it's coming from a place of honesty, it's like, hey, you know what? It's not that one's not my jam, but I like this next one that they're putting out. Or I'm going to stick around and see what else they do, because they haven't phoned it in yet. And I think just that honesty is what's most important, because nothing else is possible without it. And at some point, even if you're really good at faking it, it's going to come out at some point that you're not real. And whether it's sooner or later, I don't want to live a lie. So, and it's funny because this is a bit of a different topic, but it's because of that, where as much as I love writing music, I kind of hate it at the same time, from the standpoint of I have to go to a really dark place to write. And I have to surface some things that I don't like to surface, but they're things I need to. and it's therapy for me. And the moment that gets easy to do, I think I'll be, if that's ever easy, I'm doing something wrong. So
I would agree.
So yeah, so the goal number one is to make sure that we write something that, and we put something out there that we believe in. And even if it's a song that's a goofy song, it's with intent. You know, if we were to do a parody song or something, I don't know that we're going to do that, but you know, you can just have a lighthearted song every now and then that's just a party song or something. Well, just be honest about it. Like, hey, we like to have fun too, and this is a fun one. You know, but don't put on a costume and just be like, yeah, we're going to be this when we're writing songs, but that's not who we really are. It's like, no, because then it seems fake. You might as well have AI write all your stuff for you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Most people could spot that, not just with music. It could be anything. You could spot the phoniness. You could spot someone that's just kind of playing a role, or could say that they're an honest person, but you could just tell, just by their actions, how they speak. Maybe it's just it could be very blatantly obvious, and that's not the case at all with See This Through. You guys have in your bio about how it's about honesty, and just like with your name, it's kind of a motto for your band, the name itself, of seeing things through,
Mm-hmm.
the perseverance to get to that other side of something, no matter the cost or whatever, because that getting there is going to pay off because you got past whatever it was. So you definitely don't have to worry about, with See This Through, anybody thinking it's phony or fake. Not even a little bit, because it's genuine.
Well, some people might, but
well, let them if they do.
and and that's okay. Like I
Yeah.
said, you can't win everybody over, but I know at the end of the day, I'm pursuing this, and I have 3 awesome guys that have been with me doing this too. And you mentioned earlier about there's like a brotherhood, and we've all been through it together. Whether it's traveling every weekend to drive hundreds of miles to go to the studio, or a parent falls ill, or you have kids that are born. It's not just band. We go through life together too, and like a family, we can bicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
And but it's at the end of the day, love those guys. Whenever I need anything, all it takes is the courage to ask, and they've always been there for me, and I try to be there for them as best I can. And we're very fortunate, because that's not always the case.
No.
And if we're able to, if we're writing a song and someone doesn't like the way it's going, we just talk about it. Although most of the time we're so critical of our own work, we're already changing course before anyone has a chance to say, I don't know about that.
Like editing in the moment, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which can get you into trouble sometimes, because then you're over analyzing an idea that you're just starting with. So that can be a problem. But sometimes you just know when something's not working. And we've been very fortunate to have a good working relationship over the years, where we can say we don't like something and it's not personal. And and of course, being on the outside looking in, you can say, well, of course it's not personal. Why would you think that? Well, it's because you're putting your heart and soul into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when someone says, hey, I don't like it, it can feel like an attack, even though it's not, because, well, I just made that for you.
Exactly.
I baked this cake for you and you don't like it. I'm so sorry.
Hey, buddy. Here, you want this? I'll give it to you. Here you go. I've got all my questions in here. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good, man.
Came to jack my phone from me.
Hey, that happens.
Yeah.
That happens.
But no, I hear what you're saying completely, man. It's something you could really love, and maybe the other guys might say, hey, look, we know you love this, but here, put these optics on your eyes or whatever, put these set of ears on, and look at it like this maybe and see how you feel after you take that in and you digest it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it.
You could love the idea that you worked on today and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
this is it. This is it right here. It's like, all right, pump the brakes, go to bed, wake up tomorrow, listen to it while you're doing something else and see if you still like it. Because, we could go back and listen to any of our stuff from the On My Own EP and go, yeah, I really like that. Why did I do that? Why didn't I do this? It's just this endless cycle of I
yeah,
wish I would have. And it's like, no, you did everything you needed to do then. And, but we could always remaster something. We could always redo
yeah.
something
There's
down the road for
always
fun.
that option. Yeah,
I would like to put
like
out
put
more
out
new
a
stuff first.
yeah. This idea basically, put out some new stuff, and then after the fact, put out your feelers to the fans and say, hey, how would you guys feel about us releasing like a short EP of alternate versions of songs that we've put out already? I would definitely want to hear that, because you've mentioned in this talk how there's other versions of some songs, in whatever form, like you wish you could show me. When I heard that, first thing I thought was like, why would he say that? Because my mind is fixating on that now, because I love hearing other versions of things. I like for example, like you hear a really good song and then you think, well, wonder what this sounded like in the beginning stages where it was a finished song but finished as the demo, and then they're going to go in and work on it in the studio, right? That kind of thing. So I'm definitely intrigued if that's something that you guys might do for like alternate versions. I'm already signed on.
Well, we one of the songs we haven't released yet, we will also have an alternate version of that song that is kind of a complete 180. But
So
it's
black
funny, we
metal.
uh more cinematic,
Oh, okay.
more orchestrated, really stripped down and just taken a different direction. Um, think like I think Seether is a great comparison for this. Talking about, hey, going back revisiting stuff when you look at Disclaimer and Disclaimer 2.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at when you had Broken, just the acoustic original, and then you had the Amy Lee collaboration, and just the arrangement got so much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of something we want to do too, just to see what we can do and to not be put into a box.
I love hearing that.
It's just we'll see. I'm not sure what the timetable looks like for that particular release, but we'd like to have that out this year.
Well, I'm excited to get that in my ears when it comes out. I got a few more things for you. I don't want to keep you too terribly long, but one of the things I want to bring up is the April 19th show that you guys just did at Pierre's.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How'd that go?
It went well.
Yeah.
It went well. We hadn't played in Fort Wayne. Oh man, I think the last time we were in Fort Wayne was 2016.
Been a while.
It was October 2016, and we had quite a bit of support show up. We had family come down. We had friends come down. We had friends that had moved to the area that we hadn't seen in a long time. They came out, and we ended up getting some other fans that it's crazy. We have one fan has driven all the way up to Flint, Michigan to see us, driven hours to come see us. And that just floors me every time. I'm like, man,
they like us that much.
I don't even know what to say other than thank you. And,
yeah.
And we got some new fans that night too. But yeah, it's always tough when you do a show on a holiday weekend. But despite that, we still had a pretty good turnout. And yeah, it was fun. Chad wasn't able to make that show. He had something he couldn't get out of, and so we had to rock it as a 3-piece that night.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always weird. We've only had to do that, well, technically 2 other times, but one of those shows doesn't really count. That's a whole story I won't necessarily get into, but it was a small deal. But we had another show in Akron Ohio last year where we had to do that for the same reason. You know, it's tough to get everyone's lives lined up all the time, and sometimes you got to take an opportunity when it hits.
Mm-hmm.
And but you know, it was. I think it's because we're so close and tight knit as a band that we're able to really step up and support each other if there's an unfortunate event where a member can't be there. And you know, I know it really bummed Chad out. He wanted to be there, but and it bummed us out. We wanted him to be there too, but we were able to still pull it off, and it was still a lot of fun. And I think um, the people there really seemed to enjoy it too. So it was a good time. And the first time, and this is going back a long time, the first time I had ever been at PRs to play was in 2012. And the band I had at the time was built around my solo act. In fact, we got the show before we even had a band.
Wow.
And we had 9 weeks to put together a show. So I was traveling to Fort Wayne every weekend. It's like, all right, Friday night, we're going to learn a new song. Saturday, we're going to learn another new song. Sunday, we're going to review those songs. And then I'll be back Friday, and we're going to repeat the whole process every weekend. And it was, yeah, I think I said it was with Seether. We were the only opening band on that. And it was a sold out show for Seether. And here we were. Oh man, I was so nervous. You know, I'd never fronted a band before. And you can tell I'd never fronted a band before. But the show still went well. We sounded good, but you could just tell. Boy, I was nervous. But so it was kind of fun being back on that stage after all this time and remembering that where we were, where I was, because Tyler, Steve, and Chad, they weren't part of that band.
Right.
But my buddy Josh, who is he's working with us now, he was part of that band. So it was fun because I hadn't seen Josh in years, and he was there for that show. So it's just it's funny how music can bring everyone together, but especially when you're making the music and all the people you meet along the way and the kinships you form. And it's really special when that all kind of locks back together. So April 19th was a lot of fun just for that alone, just getting to see people and to reconnect and to be back there. And it had a lot of meaning for me personally, reflecting on all that. And what happened immediately after our show in 2012 is what inspired On My Own so many years later. So getting to play that song there on that stage was kind of a
closure.
Yeah, I think closure. I was going to go with something more expletive, and I've been trying not to use any expletives on this.
It's all right, you did.
So I'm just going to keep it PG at worst. But yes, closure. Yeah, so April 19th was a lot of fun, and we got to see some people, got to play with some other really cool bands, and that's the kind of stuff we live for. And we actually have another show. We haven't announced it yet, so I guess we will officially announce it here. Unless you follow us on Bands in Town, you've probably seen it. We're actually going to be down in Nashville, Tennessee on June 21st.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to hit the road, and we're trying to make that a bit of a run. You know, maybe do like 4 or 5 shows, traveling down, traveling back, and make like a week of it. We're working on that. We'll see how that works out, but we will definitely be in Nashville on June 21st. And the details for that show you can get at our website at seethisthrough.com, and we will be promoting it more and more here coming soon. But we've just been trying to get everything, in order for that before we start. Hey, we're playing, and this is where we're going to be. So I guess the official announcement is right now. So June 21st, Nashville, Tennessee.
You heard it, folks. June 21st, Nashville. You could add a detour to that run of shows and make your way to Oregon if you want.
That's not that far out of the way, is it?
I mean, you'd probably be going a couple thousand miles, I think.
Just off the beaten path, just slightly off the path.
Yeah. The furthest I've gone for a show is probably about 300 miles. Went and saw Volbeat, Trivium, Digital Summer when they were still a band, and who else was on that bill? I know there's another one on that bill, but yeah, about 300 miles that I traveled for that one. Pretty good show.
Good show. Yeah, I think the furthest I've traveled for a show, it was I flew down to Florida to see Cold for their Cold live performance. So I got to fly down there for that, and got to see the whole set, and got to be on the DVD, and
Oh, that's awesome.
big nerd stuff. But it was a lot of fun, and yeah, concert road trips are fun.
just for seeing sights and listening to music on the drive and getting to your destination is a reason I would do it.
Yeah, there's an anticipation.
Yeah.
That you just don't get when you're just driving in town to see a show. Like, you're anticipating it, you're looking forward to it, but man, when you're in the car for several hours and you're like, all right, we're gonna do this. It's not as fun if you have to make that 300-mile trip back after the show and you're not staying overnight. I would recommend getting a place to stay.
That's always the best choice, man. You don't want to turn or get back out on the road and drive all night and risk wrecking.
Well, yeah, the April 19th show. So, most of the guys are based out of Southwest Michigan or Northwest Indiana, like South Bend, Indiana area. I'm frequently north of Chicago. Not always, but frequently north of Chicago. And I was leading up to that show. So I had to drive to South Bend, get stuff, drive down to Fort Wayne. And when the show was over, and when we packed up all of our stuff, drive 4 hours from Fort Wayne back home so I could be up in the morning with the kids for Easter. Because they're at an age where I don't want to miss those things.
Yeah, it's important.
But yeah, I don't recommend doing that if you don't have to. I thought I was fine until the last 15 minutes. And then it's like you're falling asleep with your eyes open. Like, how does that happen?
It's felt like a crazy thing. Well, thank God you made it, though.
Yeah, no kidding. I was pretty thrilled about it.
Yeah.
Rolling down the window, and you're trying to drink enough energy drinks where you're not going into cardiac arrest, but you're still awake.
We all know the dangers of energy drinks, man. Having too much and just, yeah.
But it's like I said earlier, every time we get to play a show, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't feel like it, depending on what's going on around the house or what the travel arrangements are, and you're like, oh God, I gotta handle. But then I'm like, no, stop. This is great. And then that just realigns everything, because it's easy to get caught up in the moment to moment and to lose sight of the big picture. So yeah, man, I love every time we get to step on stage, and thank you so much for having me on and getting to talk to your audience, hopefully talking to them, not at them.
Yeah. Oh no, man, you've been great with everything you've been saying. Very informative and just real easy to talk with, easy flowing conversation. So I mean, and yeah, we're actually going to be wrapping up too here with I think I have like 2 quick questions for you, and then we're done.
I'll try to give you 2 quick answers.
Yeah,
I can be a little long-winded.
We've covered basically the future plans, some shows that are coming up, music's being worked on, which I'm sure everybody knew, but probably still love hearing that. I know I do, because I'm anxious and eager to get that new music in my ear holes. And then the second to last is, and you might get long-winded with this one because there's no simple answer. As far as music is concerned, is there anything that you've noticed that music is lacking today that you wish it would get back more of?
Man, it's really hard for me to answer that. I will say I don't really listen to the radio, and I'm not keenly aware of what's going on in the satellite space. So if I'm consuming music, I'm consuming it digitally. I'm, you know, whether it's Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, you know, I'm that's how I consume it. So it's hard for me to accurately gauge that question because I'm not 100% sure of what's going on in the mainstream. And I don't know that anyone really is, to be frank with you.
Yeah.
I think there's so much of everything out there for everyone. The hardest part is every audience is so siloed now compared to the way it used to be. And the way it used to be, we're talking the last 5 years. I mean, things were already going that way. And
Mhm.
then when everything shuts down for months or years at a time, depending on what state you're living in, that forces people's habits to change too. And, you know, post 2020, things are even weirder and still hard to pin down. So,
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer, and it feels like a non-answer, but I'm not sure how to adequately um, put a pin on that
Yeah.
because I don't know. I think it's just all music is a journey. Every artist has a journey. I think Linkin Park is a great example of that.
A very good example.
You know, I would even say Stained. If you go listen to Tormented, because I know significantly fewer people have heard their first real album, which was Tormented. It wasn't Dysfunction. Dysfunction was
Yeah.
their first label released album.
Yep.
And then you listen to The Illusion of Progress. And then you listen to Confessions of the Fallen. They've kind of done this whole thing, and now they're kind of coming back to where they started. And some bands don't do that. They kind of they do this. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a sine wave, you know. So I don't know. It's hard telling. Like I hear people complain about this topic a lot. I'm like, just don't listen to that. If you don't like it, don't listen to it. You know. So yeah, sorry, it feels like a non-answer, but
No
that's
worries.
such a hard one to pin down, and I definitely don't want to throw shade inadvertently at any artists because I know that they're on their journey too, just like the rest of us are, and they might be at a low point or figuring things out.
Yeah.
But then but I'll tell you a few artists that I do follow for inspiration, as far as more modern. Dayseeker is one.
I know him. Yeah.
Starset is another.
Yep. I used to talk to Dustin back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank in the middle of everything. Yeah, Dayseeker, Starset,
All right.
and Bad Omens.
Oh man, yeah.
You know,
Good group right there.
and there's tons of others out there. So, you know, I don't mean to leave anybody out, but I can just pull those three out and say, you know, they seem to be doing a lot of things right as far as my ears are concerned. And that's all I can judge based on is what I hear and what connects with me, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, hey, I
I don't
think your
know.
answer is actually pretty. No,
So I
I
guess
think
long
you had a
story short,
great
I don't
answer.
think anything's missing. I don't think anything's missing. I think everything's out there.
Right.
What's missing is how to find it. How do you get fast tracked to what works for you? And I think that's the biggest challenge. It's not what's missing. It's no, how do I find it? Because everything exists out there now. If I mean, between people writing stuff with AI and AI producing stuff, which can be really funny.
Yeah.
But you know, now the barrier to enter into this space is so low now. Anyone can get into it. And I don't mean low in a bad way, but it's like, you know, there aren't the gatekeepers don't exist the way they used to. In some ways, they're still there behind the scenes and you just don't know it. But as far as anybody can release something now,
Yeah.
which makes
You
it
can do it with your
hard,
phone.
which is awesome, but it also makes it difficult to be found because there's so
Yeah.
much happening. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there. I feel like I've actually answered the question. Now I'm just rambling.
No, all good, man. I think you had a great answer to that. You know, it's not an easy thing to answer. You know, I've gotten a very wide array of answers to that. Just yesterday, you know, one of my favorite interviews I've had to date was with a reformed band called Stretcher from the 90s. And when I asked him that question, he said that in his opinion, he kind of said a little bit of what you said. It's not that he felt like there's something missing in the industry these days, more that it's I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I might skewer it a little bit. So long story short is he kind of said what you did but didn't. So you're onto something with what you said. Go out and find it, you know, because it's there.
Yeah.
So then last thing, any final thoughts that you'd like to say in regard to see this through? You've already made an announcement for June 21st. But is there any last things that you'd like to say to address your fan base before we wrap this up?
Well, thank you for sticking with us for so long. And I know that our release schedule has been less than frequent, but we are working on it. And it means the world to us to have you with us as we release these things, because I know, just speaking personally, I've structured a lot of my life around being able to do this. And it's an honor to be able to have people who want to listen to what we have to play and what I have to say in a song. So we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep writing. We're actually in pre-production right now, working on some new ideas. Plus, we have a few songs in the can that are ready to go. So we're looking to have a good 2025, and looking to see where we take things writing wise this year and into next year.
Well, I love it, man. It's been great having you on. I think us fans of the band are in for a treat when that new music finally gets to us. You guys always one up yourselves, in my opinion, with each release in various ways. And yeah, been great having you on. I've loved this conversation. And if you guys want to come on, you could either bring all the guys, because you don't have to be in the same place for this, by the way. You can just all come in at your homes. I just send you guys a link, and we can do this in the future when some new music gets out, if you'd like. And I could talk to each of you, you know. I'd love to get that arranged at some point.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, like I said, you could absolutely take this once we're done here. All it is I hit end stream, and it's up on YouTube. So, and you can chop it up and do what you want with it. As I said, it is your property because it is your band we're discussing. You could make me sound like a chipmunk if you wanted. That'd be all cool.
Nah,
know?
I wouldn't do that to you.
Yeah. But
I don't think.
yeah. Hey, if you did, I'd laugh. It'd be funny to me. So thanks for coming on, Nick. It's been a great talk. You already know how big of a fan I am of you and your band. And I hope this interview finds people that don't know who See This Through is, and they check out the music and they come your way and say, hey, I found you through Liars Pacifists podcast. You know, I think that'd be pretty cool. So
I appreciate it, Will. Thank you so much for having us on. And I would say that the best place to get anything regarding See This Through is at our website, seethisthrough.com. Any big updates are going to come through there. Obviously, we're on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, and we're all those places too. But we actually own our website, so all else fails, we own that. So
we got some really cool merch on there, just so you guys know.
We do. Be adding more to it.
Yes.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Hang back for like a minute after I hit end stream. I got a quick question for you, and then you'll be on your way. All right.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everybody.